Al-Ainer. It's a new dawn for the country. We have a new president-elect that has been confirmed by the Supreme Court after a long-drawn battles in the courts. Of course, with contesting that presidency or the election, that is Azimio La Umoja. And we want to congratulate the president-elect as it is right now. But even the reality on the ground, we know that he takes a country that is divided, and that's a killing task of uniting this country is resting on his shoulders. We'll be exploring that more with our panelists here on Siasa Fiesta. So we take a break from, of course, the politicking, and we delve deeper into the matters of how we can forge forward as a country since the determination of the country. We want to focus on that. I'm joined this morning by Professor Collins Odote, who is Assistant Dean, School of Law at the University of Nairobi. Also, I'll be joined by Professor Morisa Mutabi, who is a historian and, of course, a social science professor. We'll be joined much later also by Professor Eric Oseka, and we'll be joined by also Dr. Olive Kisaka as well in the course of the program. But for now, let's see what is fresh off the press this morning. And we continue to train our focus on the new president. This is what is headlining the front page of the Standard this morning. Mr. President, that is what we have as a splash today. Mr. President. Historic moment. On the day his victory was affirmed by the highest court in the land, President-elect William Ruto set out to heal a divided nation, reaching out to his chief opponent Raila Odinga and retiring President Kenyatta, who last night promised a smooth transition from a chicken seller to the hallowed prisons of State House. It did not come easy beyond the rhetoric. However, the hard part begins. This story is well fleshed out for you on page 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, and 15 of the Standard this morning. Mr. President. And you can see him yesterday when he was holding a press briefing at his current residence. Make sure you grab a copy. We have a bite from here where he says, "I salute the judges of the Supreme Court who have performed their duty with utmost fidelity to the Constitution. They listened to all parties, considered all the issues, and applied law, and demonstrated their learning, impartiality, and patriotism." William Ruto, he continues to say, "I extend a hand of brotherhood to all my competitors and to all their supporters. We are not enemies. We are Kenyans. Let us unite to make Kenya a nation everyone shall be proud to call home." You can read the rest of the details inside the Standard this morning. And of course, momentarily, we shall be playing you as well that excerpt of the speech he gave yesterday from his residence. This is the Standard. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. William S. Ruto is the splash. Confirmed. The fifth president and incoming commander-in-chief of the Kenya Defense Forces. Also inside, Road to Freedom. A village boy meteoric rise from Sugoi to the ultimate seat of privilege, wealth, and power. This story is well fleshed out for you on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. Living the dream. Rigathi Gachagua, criticized and unrefined, is now a heartbeat away from the presidency. You have the story on page 5 of the Daily Nation today. You can see him also wearing his unflappable smile there alongside President-elect William Ruto. So near so far for Raila Odinga. This was his best bet yet. What happens to his political career now? That is the abiding question. You can read all the details on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Uhuru Salks, his choice defeated in the polls The president vilifies judges as he walks away with a bruised nose. The story is on page 9, back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Swearing in, Ruto to be sworn in as President and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces on Tuesday next week. That will happen not earlier than 10 a.m. and not later than 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Now, in a biting summary judgment, the Supreme Court dismisses Raila Odinga's petition and clears the way for William Samoei Ruto's swearing in as president in 7 days. Chief Justice Martha Koome's terse rebuke of Odinga's lawyers and confirmation of Ruto's victory completes what might seem a natural progression for the peasant child of Sugoi. But it might also be significant that he becomes only the second deputy president in Kenya to rise to the top seat. The first was his mentor, Daniel Arap Moi, who ascended to the presidency without contest in 1978 following the death in office of Jomo Kenyatta. That story is on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, actually 12 and 14 of the Daily Nation this morning. This is how it looks. That's the Daily Nation for you. Let's see what the star is holding for us. President Ruto, my promise, it says. My promise. That's it. No sub-headlines, but all the details are tucked away inside the Star this morning. Raila concedes defeat, but he disagrees with ruling. You can follow all the details on page 2 of the Star this morning. President Ruto, my promise. Now he has to buckle down to deliver on his promise that is tucked away in the manifesto. And he's here in humble submission saying thank you. This is the Star. Let's see what the People Daily is holding for us. Ruto's pledge after poll win is what is holding the front page of the People Daily today. The road ahead. The incoming president says he will not be vengeful. Promises to get down to work at once and ensure Kenya Kwanza fulfills campaign pledges. This story is tucked away on page 2 and 14 of the People Daily. Heal wounds and build Kenya. Kenyans have peacefully crossed a significant milestone of 2022 election cycle, thanks to yesterday's unanimous decision of the Supreme Court. By laying out the issues, responses, and verdicts on the 9 questions at stake, calmly and eloquently, the Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court took great pains to demonstrate to Kenyans why she and the 6 other judges arrived at their judgment. This was important for national catharsis. This was important for national catharsis. Time for the country to start, of course, bridging that particular wide chasm that was developing every day. That is the national catharsis. You can follow that story on page 10 of the People Daily. Here is an excerpt of what he had to say yesterday. He says, "It is now time for us to prepare for the day when we take up the momentous duty to serve Kenyans. Let us all reflect on our contribution and look forward to building this nation together to achieve the glory of Kenya, express its heritage and splendor, and fill every Kenyan heart with thanksgiving." Uhuru also spoke yesterday, and he says, quote unquote, "I want to take this opportunity to thank every single Kenyan for holding a peaceful election. I want to wish well all who have won as they get our country into the future. And I thank you all for the opportunity to serve and I say, may God bless you. Bless you all. And may God bless this great republic of Kenya." This story is tucked away on page 10. Let's see on top here. It says all about the Supreme Court's unanimous voice yesterday, the final verdict. 7 judges uphold IBC declaration that Ruto and Rigathi won in the presidential race. Throughout Raila's petition, promised detailed verdict in 21 days. And you have the story on page 2 and 11 of the People Daily this morning. Also, While we were doggedly following the hearings from the Supreme Court to later find or get a determination, in the UK, Liz Truss was taking over as UK Premier after Boris Johnson's party held fresh polls. And you can follow this story on page 20 of the People Daily this morning. Also, 16-page magazine on the election petition is tucked away inside the People Daily this morning. Taifa Leo, Rais wa tano is a splash today. Mahakama yathibitisha ushindi wa Ruto kwenye uchaguzi wa urais. Atamrithi Uhuru Jumanne wiki ijayo. Habari kamili ukurasa wa pili, 3, 4 na 5 wa Taifa Leo. Risasi ya mwisho ya Raila yalenga nje ya Ikulu. Ruto avuka vizuizi tele kutoa Ikulu. Mawaziri waliojaribu kuzima Ruto wazama. You have the story on page 5, page 2 and page 3 of Taifa Leo today. On top here, looking at the teaser, Uhuru arudia makosa ya Mzee Moi. Rais anayeondoka alifuata nyayo za mlezi wake katika siasa za kupitisha urais. Familia kuu za kisiasa za zimwa. Ruto abwaga familia za Gideon Moi, Uhuru Kenyatta na Raila Odinga. You can follow that story on page 4 of Taifa Leo this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. Now, this is how the market reacted yesterday. Remember, we had bugbears and fears about how this is affecting the market. But it gained 42 billion shillings after court upheld Ruto's victory. It says market gains 42 billion shillings after court upholds Ruto victory. This is the highest performance in 3 weeks. Eurobond yields fall from 15% to 13%. It says investors gained 42.1 billion shillings in paper wealth, in the highest daily gains at the Nairobi Securities Exchange in 3 weeks, as markets welcomed the Supreme Court ruling upholding the win by Deputy President William Ruto as the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya. Also, China fish imports hit 2 billion shillings, control 83% of the market. You can read all that inside the Business Daily this morning. Eyes on new MPs to pass key money bills for government. Remember, on Thursday is when now they will be converging for the first time. And KCB raises stakes in Rwanda unit by 10.8% after merger. Dollar reserves fall on debt repayment, borrowing delays. This story, we follow it on page 14 of the Business Daily this morning. Let's cross over to Rwanda and see what is happening just across the border. RSSB reform will close accountability loopholes. Right? Makes sense for the Rwandese. Maybe not for you, going way over your head. But also we can see Rwanda Social Security Board's Chief Executive Regis Rugemanshuro consulting with his deputy Louis Kanyonga during the public hearing before the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee in Kigali on Monday, September the 5th. Rugemanshuro told the committee that there are changes being done to ensure financial efficiency. And let's see what is happening on the international scene. The Washington Post is looking at that like this morning. Pays packs pile up in bid war for mean labor. Trump factor tills fall calculus. No one is taking responsibility. Where will Amazon go next in health? The wrong plane out of Afghanistan. This is the Washington Post, the letters that we can get. And this is the Guardian for you. Truss will press on with tax cuts despite Tory warnings. Germans to get 65 billion euros in help to pay energy bills. Of course, there's energy crisis in Europe right now. This is how the Guardian is looking for you. The Independent end of the party. Andrew Grice looks at what's next for the departing Prime Minister, rumored to fancy a comeback, and the divided Conservatives that he's leaving behind. And you can see who's in that garbage can there. That is Boris Johnson. And this is the Independent for you. The New York Times, This is how it looks this morning. Unwritten rules poses dilemma for 2 inquiries. Russian use bioweapon lie to smear US. Europe sprints to supply relief on energy costs. That is the New York. Serena's 7-day goodbye to the sports she changed forever. You can follow all that inside the New York Times as well. The Times. Trust team holds stock on freezing energy bills. This is how it looks. And the latest copy of The Economist. The United States of America. This is how it looks. And also Mikhail Gorbachev, the man who liberated millions, even if he didn't set out to do so. And also the latest copy of the Newsweek. All germs, monkeypox and polio are only the most visible of the deadly threats we face from a rise in infectious diseases. All germs, new fears. This is the latest copy of the Newsweek. And could Trump get a fair jury? That is another burning question there that you want to follow inside the Newsweek. And the Times, the latest copy. This is how it looks. The new guard. Chile's the youngest ever president is leading his country through a historic moment of change. That is the Time magazine for you. Those are your dailies. I shall be running you by the editorial cartoons. I want us now to buckle down to just discuss what happened yesterday and where we are moving forward. It's a new dawn for the country. I'm holding court this morning, as I've mentioned, with Professor Collins Odote, who is the Assistant Dean, School of Law at the Faculty of Law at the University of Nairobi. Also, we have with us Professor Maurice Amutabi, who is a historian and a social science professor. We have with us as well the CEO of Corat Africa, that is Christian Organizations Research and Advisory Trust of Africa, that is Corat. This is Dr. Oliver Kisaka, eagerly waiting to be joined by Professor Gitile Maituli, who is the professor teaching management and leadership. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I haven't seen Oliver for years. Very nice to see you.
Oh, really?
Well, I normally see him on TV, eh?
By the way, in the meantime, I could be serving you some tea. I don't know what you care for, Professor.
I'll take some tea.
Some tea, okay?
Yes.
Tea's fine. Tea is fine for you, okay?
Yeah, tea's
Tea as well. Good. All right. So, first of all, yes, yesterday was a big day. I'll just want to get your reaction. You've been doggedly following this particular process. And yeah, yesterday was when now we have the final sound of the gavel, and we got a determination from the Supreme Court. We have a president-elect. Let's just begin with you, Professor.
Yesterday, for me, I think was a very great day for Kenya. A great day for Kenya because if you reflect 20 years ago,
Yes.
we would not have been where we were yesterday.
Yes.
If you remember 2007,
Yes.
you remember the disputed election of 2007, and if you go back and now see that in 2022, we can have an election which is extremely close,
Yes.
an election where there is a lot of heat and passion, and at the end of it, we have a verdict that is acceptable across the country. I felt proud to be Kenyan.
Yes.
The second time I felt proud to be Kenyan. This is the first election in a long while where citizens of the country were peaceful everywhere. I got a video from Kondele.
From Kondele?
Yes, with citizens dancing with policemen
Yes.
and saying peace, peace, life goes on. For me, it was extremely exciting to be Kenyan, and that's the kind of maturity of our democracy. My last point, and that's why I say it's nice to see Oliver. The last time we spoke with Oliver,
Yes.
we were talking about the run-up to the 2010 Constitution, about some provisions around it. For me, I think the most beautiful aspect of yesterday was the 2010 Constitution, because the 2010 Constitution got us where we were yesterday. It enabled us to have an election
Yes.
where at the end of it, as Kenyans, we celebrate ourselves, we celebrate our institutions, and we celebrate our leaders. So for me, I was extremely proud yesterday to be a Kenyan.
All right, and Dr. Oliver Kisaka also, it's been a while
Yes.
since I saw you as well. Have I seen
Well,
you this year? We
Yes.
haven't.
No, I think I've been here. Thank you, Divan.
Then it's been a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Your
I
reaction,
joined
please.
Prof. Amutabi. So both of you are called Amutabi. Did I get it right? What did
No,
you
Odote.
Odote, because I think you said
Oh,
from
you're calling Mutabi Odote.
Yeah, I was trying to process it in my mind.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, Prof. Odote, it's good to see you.
Very good to
Prof.
see you.
Amutabi, I think I normally see you on TV, so it's a real joy to meet you.
Thank you.
Dibal, I think this country has been blessed by God in an amazing way, and our people have continued to mature.
Yes.
I really agree with what Prof. Odote has said every bit, and especially that the new constitution is beginning to shape the political culture of Kenya. I think in the last 5 years, I have seen more impact of the new constitution and its institutions than had happened previously. So yes, I really appreciate. But I also want to congratulate the key politicians that were involved in this process.
Yes.
That while Kenyans are maturing, they themselves, I think, are taking certain lessons from the people, and they are able to say we will submit to the new constitution.
Yes. Just half of
to the new constitution, and we will give space to the institutions of the country. I was a bit worried when the IEBC was being vilified. I thought it was an unfair vilification, and especially because you are in a position where if an election was to be nullified, there is no constitutional option for you to have any other institution. So you'd have locked yourself in a very difficult situation. And yet the constitution does provide that if you differ with this particular institution, there is a step you can go to.
Yes.
So you don't have to vilify them in that way, for your own sake, actually. So I think the ability to then overcome that was great, and we appreciate it. So we congratulate the winners, but we also congratulate the losers. I think they have behaved like statesmen and women, and they have a future in our politics.
All right.
Yeah.
Amutabi.
Yeah, thank
Your
you.
reaction?
Thank you very much, Dibal, and thank you, Professor, for those remarks. I would like to just thank Kenyans for keeping the peace. I think that's something that we need to take positively. But we have learned from the past where there was a lot of violence on the political scene. So we must thank Kenyans for keeping the peace. And it indicates two things. One is that our democracy is maturing.
Yes.
It shows that the maturity of democracy is coming home, and that Kenyans are realizing that issues of development and their own growth is more important than doing the bidding for division within society. Then secondly, this election shows the possibilities that Kenya provides. We congratulate the President-elect, Dr. William Ruto, and it shows us that in Kenya, just like America and other places, that the dreams that people have actually possibilities of fulfillment, and we see this in the Asala dynasty narrative that emerged, and we are seeing that triumph. And then the other issue is that President-elect Ruto has reached out, and the President's speech also, President Uhuru Kenyatta's speech was also magnanimous in terms of that there will be peaceful handing over, and so on. That tells us that we have reached a point where our politicians have reached maturity. Supreme Court's decision was delivered in a more, I think, obvious and clear manner. And I think despite the fact that people accepted the results, of course, some said they accepted but disagreed, which is democratic, and I think that's very good. The other issue is that the two leading presidential candidates in this country, Dr. William Ruto and Raila Amolo Odinga, these are heroes. I think from this point henceforth, Kenyans regard them as heroes, and they all have roots in heroism. Ruto's Asala narrative being bought by many, and some way roots in the Okoyotship and so on, and Raila's own legendary status that is elevates him to the point of even Luana Magere and others. So these are heroes that must be celebrated, and we must thank God for the peace that the nation kept, especially the role of church leaders and the NCIC and other stakeholders in the democratic process. Even countries that support Kenya's democracy were all with us, stood with us, And the anxiety now is over. Now people can go back to work, because the country was held, hostage with all these anxieties. That we are happy that the anxieties are over. Now the country can move towards peace and development. So we thank God for the peaceful conclusion of this process.
Indeed, thank you. And of course, this morning I want us to peg our thoughts on so many issues, because I think this is a transformative moment for the country. We should be gleaning some lessons from this predicament that we've been as a country. It's not the first time, harking back to 2013, 2017. It seems we are having a settings that always defaults towards the Supreme Court, and questioning also the authenticity that all the results that really comes from IBC, the leadership from IBC. The courts really made their pronouncement on IBC yesterday, and critically we need to look at that as well. But over and above, where we could predicate our conversation this morning is on the political culture in this country. We, of course, start ourselves to be a very democratic country, but when it comes to this election or the previous election that we've seen, well, it seems this democracy, which is a beautiful word, sometimes you don't really live up to what it's really entailed and what it really, of course, is endowed in the word democracy. So I want us just to focus on first of all, on political culture. But before we go there, of course, we have to listen into what the president had to say yesterday, and also to implore Kenyans for how they have been behaving so far. Very peaceful, no flares at all. And we know the Supreme Court right now has declared UDA leader William Ruto as the winner of the 2022 presidential election, following a petition that had challenged the announcement by Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chair Wafula Chebukati. The election was hotly contested. The passions were high, with both sides believing they won. Now, the court put that to rest with its decision yesterday. Rightly put by the Deputy Chief Justice, more than 6 million Kenyans who voted for Raila have nothing to celebrate about. The contest was won by a difference of 233,211 votes. A paltry 1% of the registered voters. This inundates us to call for magnanimity from the winners and humility from the losers. Unity and progress are of utmost importance. The electoral process, as expected, has been fractionate. The country is divided down the middle. It is time to celebrate for the winners, but not to chest them. It is expected that the winners will revel in their victory, but not at the expense of the losers' dignity. The ties that bind us are stronger than the periodic elections fever. The challenges that we face as a country cut across both divides. Coming together will hasten the solutions to high cost of living, insecurity, lack of employment, among other issues bedeviling us. The presidency is a symbol of national unity, and we call upon President-elect to lead from the front in uniting the country. Whereas the Constitution gives absolute privileges and power to the winner, the losers cannot be left behind. Long gone are the days when a few determined the path the country takes. Inclusivity is part of development. It is encouraging that the President-elect has acknowledged the importance of uniting. And we just want to listen in, of course, to what Kenyans had to say, the President-elect had to say, also the outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta had to say yesterday, and also the chair of the electoral, that is Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission as well. Listen in.
Our woods. And let us get to work. We have work to do. We are inheriting a dilapidated country with a 10 trillion public debt. We are inheriting a country with 6 million young people who have no jobs. We are inheriting a country with 14 million Kenyans in CRB. We have work to do.
Our electoral and judicial institutions have won, and the Constitution has asserted itself and prevailed. My esteemed competitors now have a credible basis on which to consider the outcome, and we are vindicated by the choice of the people of Kenya. The court's decision completes the loop of institutional stewards of the rule of law, entrench our Constitution, and express the sovereign will of the people who have articulated themselves quite eloquently, directly, and through their constitutional institutions. I will shortly be putting a call to my good friend, President Uhuru Kenyatta. We have not we have not I haven't talked to him in months. But shortly I will be putting a call to him so that we can have a conversation on the process of transition. Yeah. I know he worked hard in his in his own way, but the people of Kenya have made a decision.
I commit to executing the orders of this court to the letter. The process of handing over is in progress through the Assumption of Office Committee, which actually has already begun its work as of August 10th, 2022. And indeed, it is my intention to oversee a smooth transition to the next administration, and all the necessary orders to facilitate this process have already been issued. And because democracy is a work in progress, I urge the country to respect the institutions that midwife our new leaders. And in doing so, I also urge citizens to constantly put them under scrutiny, for this is the civic duty of every single Kenyan. In particular, this civic duty requires every citizen to constantly put the truth presented by our constitutional institutions to test. And they must test them for coherence, but also for correspondence. They must constantly scrutinize the coherence of the truth given by these institutions, and to ask themselves whether the truth has been coherent from one election to another. Has there been a consistent pattern that is acceptable to our democratic ethos? We must ask ourselves, is it about numbers or is it about process? Which of these two is it? And can our institutions rule one way in one election and another way in another election without scrutiny? I do invite you, Kenyans, to keep vigil and indeed to hold all institutions to account. The second thing we must place under scrutiny is whether the truth given by institutions has correspondence. That is, do the truths given by our institutions correspond with what is observable by the citizen. True beliefs and true judgments must correspond to the actual state of affairs. But do our constitutional institutions meet this threshold?
The Commission appreciates Kenyans for peacefully exercising their democratic right to vote on the 9th of August in accordance with Article 38 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. In fulfillment of the Constitution, the Commission put in place a robust and transparent election infrastructure to ensure that the votes cast were counted, electronically transmitted, verified, tallied, announced, and declared in line with Articles 81 and 86 of the Constitution. The general election was conducted by about 1,000 dedicated permanent employees of the Commission, assisted by over 400,000 temporary staff countrywide. In the course of discharging our constitutional duty, the Commission and its staff endured harassment, intimidation, abduction, arrests, and some lost their lives. In this general election, the abuse of IBC staff reached an unimaginable scale. Apart from the 2 deaths, the Commission and staff suffered other atrocities, including, but not limited to, assault and injury of the chairman, Commissioners Professor Abdi Gulier and Boya Molu, and the Commission Secretary and Chief Executive Officer Mr. Marijan Hussein at the National Tallying Center during the declaration of results. Unwarranted arrest of a voter education coordinator by anti-terrorist police unit on the floor of the National Tallying Center, who was detained for 3 days. Abduction, torturing, and holding incommunicado for 9 hours of the managed election operations and the support staff by persons to be believed to be security agencies. To date, no one has been arrested for these crimes committed against members of the Commission and its staff. As it stands, no human rights or civil society organization have condemned these heinous acts meted on the Commission and its staff.
Hapa katika eneo bunge la Tetu ni baadhi ya zile maeneo ambazo ilikuwa stronghold sana sana ya rais wetu mteule William Samoei Ruto. Hapa tulimpatia 86% of the vote. Kwa hivyo sisi tunajua tulikuwa wa upande gani, tunajua ombi letu lilikuwa gani, na leo tunaona kwamba maombi yetu yamejibiwa. William Samoei Ruto na Rigathi Gachagua ndio sasa watakuwa wakiongoza hii nchi ya Kenya.
Mambo na hasla, unaweza toka chini uende juu. Na sasa mahali tuko, naona kweli Mungu ametungubuka, na tunajua kwa sababu ni mtu amekula shida, ni mtu alikuwa ameingiliwa na watu wengi, lakini Mungu amefanya maajabu. Sasa najua lazima bei ya maisha ipungue.
Serikali yenye tulikuwa tunataka, na wametuhakikishia mambo mengi, na najua watafanya kazi. Nashukuru Mungu juu amefanya mambo makuu. Sisi ni watu tunapenda Mungu. Tumeomba kwa muda na amesikia maombi yetu.
Nimehurumika sana. Niko na huzuni mingi sana. Sikuwa nataraji hizi vitu. Lakini kwanza nashukuru kanisa vile mwenzangu ameongea. Tunaona amani imekuwa hapa. Tumekuwa kwa TV 2 good hours. Masaa mawili tukiangalia tu matokeo. Alafu vile huyo mama ameongea Madam Justice, nimeona roho yangu ingine imeenda huko, ingine imeenda huko. Sina amani kabisa.
Ni sisi wenyewe tukiharibu vitu zetu tutaumia. Afadhali tuwe na amani na tuendelee na maisha, na tunajua la kwamba hata wenye wamechagua hata huyo president ambaye ametangazwa, hao pia wako Kenya na sisi pia tuko Kenya. Na wenye wako Kenya wote wanashare one budget. Tutashare one budget, kama ni unga tutanunua wote kwa bei moja.
Sisi maashla. Kuja angalie maashla bila nataka. Afanye kazi. Fanya kazi hata kama ingia 27 angeshatoka. hata yeye atatoka tu, hata Uhuru sasa tayari ametoka.
For the first time in history, as you can see around, people are very peaceful. Nobody has gone to the road. Even the media people are not interfered with. So, what we want to say that all the petitions that we took to court as Azimio la Umoja, even none of them was qualified.
I'm not satisfied, but since we have to go by the rule, I have to accept, and maybe we shall still fight again next time.
So he has to be a president for every Kenyan, not only the people who voted for him. So he has to act within all the parameters. Let him make sure that all Kenyans are covered within his regime.
To Ruto, I can tell him that we shall work with him, and let him not subside some people. Let him work with all Kenyans. Let him hear even the other people who are on the other side of Azimio. He knows. Let him know people's feelings, the inner feelings, everybody, not only those who voted for him.
We shall live to fight another day. Hopefully we pray for peace and believe that another day is coming.
So hatutasema baba ni mbaya ama Ruto ni mbaya, hatutakuwa kwa mambo ya ukabila. Hata wakati walikuwa naongea, hawakuongea mambo ya ukabila. Walisema Kenya kama Kenya iwe kitu kimoja. Iwe hii Mjaluo ama Mkikuyu ama nini. I would like to say that let us be together as a Kenyan, kama wana Kenya.
All right, a moment of truth there from Kenyans as well. We've heard from outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta and President-elect Dr. William Ruto. And we want to just put some of his matters into perspective right now. When we talk about political culture in this country, this should be the learning point that we need to pick up with these lessons and move on to see this Kenya changing to be a better Kenya from what we have right now. I just wanted to start with you, Professor Collins Odote. First of all, when we talk about political culture in this country, how would you describe it, the current state of play?
I think yesterday, as you looked at the judiciary,
yes,
and as you also looked at IEBC, because I'll use that to answer political culture. I've had the privilege of consulting with them over the last 10 or so years, and I know the hard work that the individuals in both of those institutions have. But every election cycle, they suffer. In fact, I've kept making the point that anytime you go to IEBC, and I think the chairman was making it, it's like a deathbed. And it's like a deathbed not because the men and women who work there are bad, but it's because we have a bad political culture. A bad political culture where you are damned if you do and damned if you don't. I think for me, the greatest lesson out of this election is the politicians better smell the coffee. Because the culture that they have perpetuated in this country, a culture where it is my way or the highway, a culture where they do not want to respect institutions, a culture where they do not want Kenyans to be able to have a life, a culture where they do not want Kenyans to be able to have a sitting and enjoy themselves. As we're speaking now, we speak very well as Kenyans, we do our best. When politics comes in, you all of a sudden discover, I come from region X, I come from region Y, and the politicians will manipulate that to their advantage. I think as the Deputy Chief Justice made a point yesterday when she said, 7.x million Kenyans will be celebrating, 6.x million Kenyans will be sulking. The thing that I liked yesterday is all Kenyans recognize that, by the way, we both are winners and both are losers. We are winners because we have a country. We are winners because we've gone through a democratic process. We are losers because we are getting into leadership. Politicians who day in, day out, and across the divide, take us for granted. Politicians who get in. If you look at the newspapers, you start hearing, I've just read something in the newspaper about a politician who is saying, I want to travel to 10 places before the year ends. I'm like, we have an economy which is suffering. The kind of thing somebody think about is traveling to 10 places before the country is over. Unfortunately, the politicians still think that we are in 1997. They don't recognize that we're in 2022. 2022, a country where the Kenyans have grown, a country that requires political maturity, that recognizes that leadership is a responsibility. If you look at the result of this election, Dibal, a third of Kenyans did not come out to vote. And they are dissatisfied, not with one single leader. they are dissatisfied with politicians because they have been used to a culture where politicians take sovereignty for granted. They take citizens as people who can only be used for tools for voting. I think the one enduring message for me to the political class is, as you get sworn in this week on Thursday, as you elect your speaker, as you start your house business, you better recognize that the weakest link in our democracy is yourselves. As you go into the National Assembly, as you go to the Senate, as you go to the County Assembly, you better recognize that the responsibility you get bestowed in under the Constitution to lead, to serve Kenyans is one that you must take seriously. So my plea to the political class, and I thank the President-elect for the messaging that he gave yesterday. President Ruto will have to lead from the front in terms of ensuring that the political leadership recognize that leadership is a service, and that the bad political hygiene we've had in the past, where you think you can take citizens for granted, manipulate citizens, do not steward resources put into you for good use, is one in the past, because we are in an economic challenge. Kenyans are hopeful, Kenyans are resilient, but that resilience cannot be taken for granted over the next 5 years.
Right, Professor Dr. Oliver Kisaka, the political culture, and moving forward, what is the ideal political culture that we should aspire for as a country?
Yeah, thank you. In 1958, at a conference that was held here in Nairobi, actually sponsored by the National Council of Churches of Kenya, a statement was made by one of the speakers that good politics benefits when people are educated and when they have values.
Yes.
I think sometimes what you see in Kenya looks like a misunderstanding of the reason why we need to govern one another and to organize our country. In fact, half the time, the political leadership doesn't realize that we are a nation that's not just existing in isolation, but within the international community of very serious competitive forces. Statistics does show that Africa doesn't even reach 2% of global economy. That's Africa.
2% of global
doesn't
economy.
reach 2% of global economy. It has not organized itself to realize that it is in serious competition for resources, for space, for progress, for invention. We are still focused on the little that we can gain. So we come to power to try and enrich ourselves. I was saddened about 10 or 15 years ago when a governor comes into power and chooses for himself a chief of staff. And the first assignment for the chief of staff is, how do I get re-elected? So you are beginning at the point of being sworn in for 5 years, and you are giving him the assignment to make sure you are re-elected in 5 years' time. The meaning of that, steal as much as you can, organize as much as you can, put aside, because I need to stay in power. He has not conceptualized that it is about organizing the governance of his people and facilitating their engagement within the socio-economic space, and then contributing to the common good. Because every time we use words like GDP and the rest, we are talking about the collective output of a particular nation. So I would invite our people to refocus. Let us shift from this personal, selfish self-enrichment to begin thinking about how the country and everybody in it can access services, can access opportunity, can have the freedom to express themselves for the collective good. Because in the final analysis, Kenya is not just within Kenya itself, it is actually competing in the international space. So my first point is that there needs to be a refocus in terms of why we go into power, in terms of why we present ourselves as possible managers of the economy. The second thing is an appreciation, and I think Prof. Odote spoke to this at the beginning, the fact that the aspirations of the new constitution, CK 2010, actually begins to take effect when institutions like the judiciary assert themselves and temper excesses and challenge the president, tell him no, that's an excess. Even if you are president, you cannot go beyond the law. They challenge whoever and tell him no. If you are coming to this court, bring evidence that meets the standard. They tell Kenyans, I mean the IEBC, you can't just function the way you want. You may have succeeded in running this election, but these are the ways we want you to change. And so you begin to see that institutions are actually saying, you can't just walk all over us. We are here, and we are here for a purpose. Your power reaches here and our power reaches here. And as Kenyans know that, I think they are going to have a very different approach. I do think that among the reasons that statesmanship has taken center stage is that people have also realized that the people have changed. And they are saying there, we are not going to ban our business. We are not going to waste our families. This is a contest. It's Arsenal playing with Manchester United. One wins today, another one will win next time. So let's have hope. And I think that's going to change the way this culture happens.
Thank you. Let's hear from Professor Gitile. Good morning. Good to see you.
Morning. Good to see you too. About, I think
today everyone beat you to the punch. You slept through the alarm.
Yes. I did.
Okay.
First I slept in the Gajandon because I left my keys in Aguru for my house.
Sorry about that.
So the distance is very far.
I can imagine. Oh, we need to serve you tea. For that matter, we need to serve you some strong tea. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
So
yes.
Our politics is really not much different from what I see in the advanced countries, from the US, for example. It's always pull and pull, and that is the nature of the politics. I don't think we are any different when you look at how we have conducted ourselves. The only thing I'm going to agree that has changed from what we have been doing things is the maturity of the Ghanaian voters.
Yes.
And mainly what they have learned in the last 10 years has helped a great deal to make it has informed how the voter is making the decision.
Yes.
The Kenyan citizens, they were able to evaluate carefully the promises in Jubilee made.
Yes.
In 2012, 2013, and then Jubilee came short of nearly all the promises that they made. So the citizens were not really interested in this election that much.
Yes.
Because they know they were fooled, and therefore think they can be fooled again. Now, is that unique to Kenya? The answer is really no, it isn't. When I look at how we have conducted this election, when I look at how the Americans conducted theirs the other day, there is, I think we were probably better than the Americans. Because we didn't get anybody calling somebody and saying, can you find me 10,000 votes? We didn't say that at all. So I think we are bad. We are much more mature. But I think the Kenyans need to be congratulated generally. They have understood that the politicians are different from them, as Mwalimu has said, completely different. You know, I don't know if you had the benefit of looking at, what is the name, the former President Moi's aide, Linjiro's book has an interesting section for the people of Kenya. He says that at one time when the late president was in the opposition, and he was fairly tough as an opposition leader, and the Kenyatta called him, and they told him, my friend, when you go hunting the jackal, the hyenas, and some other animal I don't remember with your dog, you have to remember that these fellows are cousins. They may turn around their team. So he said, what you are doing by opposing my government and saying what you are saying, you are scaring our food away. All these people you see is our food. So let's be careful. Let's not scare away. Come, we work together. So President Moi came to Kenyatta. They worked together. Eventually became president. The Kenyans are getting that message loud and clear. That this is a different species from us. So they now know that, look, it's a game, like my panelist here said. And this game, it doesn't have to separate us. They have understood that their neighbor, like in Jesus said, is not the fellow from their tribe. It's not the Zandusi and it's not the Pharisee. It is the Samaritan who they think, quote unquote, will now be the enemy. Their neighbor is the one who living next to them. When they have a problem, that's why they will get their 500 shillings to solve their problem. They will not get it William Ruto. They will not get it from Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta. So that realization has helped to mature the way we have behaved over this election, and I can only see us becoming better and better as a country in fashioning a peaceful future for this nation.
Indeed. Thank you. Let's just take a short break, then we'll circle back with Professor Mutabi here. Just moving forward, looking at the political hygiene so far, I think going by the sentiments from Kenyans, truly, we've made a great milestone, right, in reacting to some of the political turnouts, even the announcement of the results. I think they need to be celebrated for that. But at this moment of catharsis then, what should we look into? You know, there is the rise of the outsiders, the fall of the dynasties right now, as they may call it. Now we have someone who's really, sort to speak, is really coming from the left side, a Ballab to Kashmir, rags to riches story. You know, first at the start of the presidency, and he gets it at the end of the day. An inspiration to many, right? When we circle back, we look at that. And also the issue of the institutions that we've heard from President Uhuru Kenyatta, that institutions are not true. Is there a problem with our institutions? The courts also raised the issue of corporate governance from IBC. Maybe that can be also a learning point for other institutions in this country. Do we really take the aspect of corporate governance seriously in this country? We circle back with more. Don't go away.